Hi, I'm Amy Hill Hearth. I'm the author of the Miss Dreamsville novels, as well as the nonfiction bestseller Having Our Say, the Delany Sisters First 100 Years. I'd like to tell you a little about myself and my books. Thank you for joining me here. Miss Dreamsville and the Collier County Women's Literary Society is about people who are misfits in a small town until they join a book club where they find the one thing they didn't have as individuals, a place to belong. The book is set in beautiful Naples, Florida in 1962 and 1963, when it was still a sleepy southern backwater on the Gulf of Mexico and at the edge of the Everglades. In the sequel, Miss Dreamsville and the Lost Heiress of Collier County, the same characters are reunited 1 year later in 1964 when the river and swamps they love are threatened by development. It's also about how our identities are closely tied to the places we love, the places we call home, and the cost of keeping secrets in a small town from one generation to the next. This was Naples, Florida in the 1960s. And so was this. This was Naples, an idyllic place to live. But not for everyone. Public schools were segregated despite the ruling 10 years earlier by the Supreme Court. It's hard to imagine what a small town Naples was in those days, with a quiet, low-key downtown and just a few thousand year-round residents compared to today. I wanted to focus on Collier County because my husband grew up there in the 1960s. While I had lived elsewhere in Florida in the early 1980s, my husband's descriptions made Naples in the 60s sound more like the outskirts of Columbia, South Carolina, where I had spent my formative years. Many people lived hand to mouth. Hard to believe today when one considers that Naples is one of the premier resorts in the United States of America, sometimes referred to as America's Monaco. Specifically, I was inspired to write the books by this person, my late mother-in-law, Jackie. A beautiful, opinionated Boston gal who, by all accounts, had a difficult time adapting to life in Collier County when the family relocated there in the 60s. Jackie was a free-spirited person. While my books are fiction, the springboard for their creation was Jackie, who really did start a late-night radio show in which she called herself Miss Dreamsville, scandalizing the town. I began my career as a newspaper reporter, which turns out to be terrific training to write historical fiction. The challenge of writing historical fiction is doing the research and getting your facts right, but for me, that's second nature. In fact, I did an investigative research internship at Tampa Magazine, followed by several years as a general assignment reporter at the Daytona Beach News-Journal. It was in Daytona Beach that I met my future husband, Blair, the Collier County native, when I interviewed him for a newspaper story. We moved to New York, and by the late 1980s, I was writing for the New York Times. And that's how this book came about. I interviewed two reclusive centenarian sisters for the New York Times. My story attracted the attention of a book publisher. The book was a New York Times bestseller for more than 2 years and spawned a Broadway play and an award-winning television film. Although my husband Blair and I live in the greater New York area, a huge part of our hearts belongs in Florida.
and it always will.